Prynhawn Dar, good afternoon and welcome, croeso, to this multi-location meeting of the Cabinet Scrutiny Committee on the 28th of February 2024. I am Councillor Phil Rogers and I'll be chairing this meeting. Please can you ensure that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. In addition, when asked to raise your hand, if members who are virtually viewing this meeting could raise your hands, your electronic hand, if a member in the Council, just raise your hands. Just for your information, we'll be scrutinising items 8 and 9 of the Cabinet Board papers this afternoon. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest, please? I can't see any indication, so we'll move forward with agenda item 3. The minutes of the previous meetings. These are listed on pages 5 to 16 of our report. The minutes are attached there. We'll take all the minutes together. Has anybody got any issues they'd like to bring up with the minutes, previous minutes, please? I can't see any indications, so we'll move on. If you feel these are an accurate record of the meeting, I am happy to propose them. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Moving along, we'll accept those as correct then. Thank you. Agenda item 4, pre-decision scrutiny. We're now going to move to the Cabinet Board agenda, again, scrutinising items 8 and 9. Item 8, revenue budget monitoring, quarter 3. These are listed on pages 23 to 40 of the Cabinet papers. Officers, would you like to add anything additional?
No, thank you, Chair. Happy to go to questions. Diolch.
Thank you, Hugh. We'll now move to members' questions. I have an indication already from Councillor Suzanne Paterson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I must express my thanks to Hugh because I've been sending him a few emails trying to sort of get my head around some of the figures. But I did notice, and I'm sorry I didn't make a note of the pages on the revenue, that there was a figure of 3.870 million going back into reserve. Now, I needed explanation as to what reserve, whether it was general reserve or specific reserves, and Hugh was kindly told me that it's specific reserves. And then the next question I had for him was, well, why? You know, what is it about the money that was put into the budget for things for this year? Why haven't they been done? So he sent me a long list, and they are so diverse. It's just lots of different areas where the work hasn't been done this year. And a question from that came forward after having there's no one particular thing that I could say, well, what's that? There's loads of different things. And I wondered, because there was one of them which actually said that they were looking for a post, I think it was 40,000 something. I beg your pardon, I'm trying to read these through anyway, there was a post that was vacant that they had slump filled. So my question is, do we have sufficient officers to complete works that are necessary, really? Because it doesn't seem like there's one part that we're not actually catching up in year. And I understand some projects do run over, but there just seems to be quite a long list that actually total up nearly 4 million. So that was my question. Do we have sufficient officers to deal with everything that should have been done in this revenue year? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patson. I think you're referring to page 24, and
yes,
it's the return of 3.87 million back
That's
to environment.
Right. 3.87, that's correct. Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just for members who obviously weren't cited on my reply to Councillor Patterson, in terms of the 3.8 million, 2.4 million or 2.379 million going back into reserves relates to a delay in purchasing vehicles. So we had planned to buy some large recycling vehicles this year. We've now currently put that on hold whilst we undertake a fleet review. So there's 2.379 million going back into reserves in relation to vehicles. There's £700,000 that we were intending to spend on remodelling the Crumlin Burrows transfer station. That project's been delayed till next year, so that's £700,000 of the 3.87 million. And as you mentioned, Councillor Patterson, there are 12 other entries on that schedule in relation
Yeah,
to
quite a lot, yeah.
various bits and pieces going back into reserves. Some relate to, as you say, staffing, in the fact that we do have challenges in certain areas, in particular Nicola's area, probably in terms of recruiting to posts. It's a argument stroke discussion we've rehearsed before in Cabinet and Scrutiny, I think, around the balance between pay, private sector, availability of staff and things like that. So, and whether Nicola wants to just sort of embellish on that. But in terms of the 3.87, the vast majority relates to two specific items, vehicles and the Crumlin Boroughs remodelling. So, Nicola, do you want to maybe add something to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Chair. If you're happy for me to add, Hugh was quite right. We have had a delay in terms of the fleet procurement because we wanted to ensure that it was linked into the fleet review, so that we didn't purchase vehicles in the absence of knowledge in terms of how we were going to transition our fleet to renewable energy. And we also needed to establish what the cost difference was between continuing with diesel and petrol fueled vehicles compared to more energy efficient vehicles, and how much funding was available to us, and was there a significant gap, and was the funding that was being offered by Welsh Government sufficient to plug that gap. So we needed to know all of that information. So that procurement is about to start, but until that has concluded, we can't make a decision on the vehicles that we are required to purchase. So that's why there is a delay in that. So it is committed. It's just there's just a delay in spending. We have, as Hugh has indicated, had significant problems in trying to secure staff in a whole host of services within my directorate. We've been out to some jobs 4 times and we've been unable to secure any applicants, and those that we have had interest from just don't have the skills, qualifications, etc. to enable them to deliver the service that we require of them. We have looked at market supplements and we have had some success in relation to that in certain services, but not all others, which is why that there is budget set aside, which is still to be spent to enable us to tackle the capacity issues, which we have discussed on numerous occasions with members in the past. So it continues to be a problem, but we are trying to address it through the mechanisms we have available to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nicola and Hugh. Councillor Patterson, would you like to come back and respond?
Just to say that I'm immensely grateful to the officers, especially Hugh, who have helped me no end with this. And this is obviously our last quarter scrutiny of this year's budget, so we move along. So I think it's given me a few pointers as to where we need to concentrate on in scrutiny, so that might be something for the forward work programme. So I'm that the system is working as far as I'm concerned there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Rob Jones, you did indicate you may want to bring something in. Do you want to come in at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Just want some clarity because this is the revenue budget. I got 2 documents open which I'm going to refer to. One is on page 24, just sort of some clarity on the energy efficiency, transition and contingency. We actually set that budget at 2.8 for the reasons outlined in the report. As I understand it, there's been a one-off contribution towards energy costs in schools of £720,000, and then a one-off contribution to the Environment Directorate towards civic building and public lighting energy costs of £780. That currently, and I appreciate that the revenue budget we're reporting on doesn't cover the period that we're in now, but that means there's 1.3 million underspend in relation to that budget. Looking at the narrative accompanying this on page 30, it says that the budget is projected to underspend by 600k after transferring 700k into the accommodation reserve to fund the efficiency for a lighting scheme, which will now be delivered during 2024-25. So therefore that, it says, has also been funded from the budget of 1.5 million in total. Is therefore the monies that are being transferred into the 24-25 account going as a capital project or as a revenue project?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Can I bring Hugh back in, please?
Yeah, thanks very much. So the funding will be transferred into the accommodation reserve. So that's a revenue reserve. But when the actual projects get delivered next year, they will be capital projects because they will last for longer than a year, but they will be funded from a revenue reserve. So you can fund capital expenditure from revenue reserves. What you can't do is vice versa. So as you say, Councillor Jones, we spent £1.5 million on energy costs, and we've identified 2 large-scale LED lighting refurbishment projects within the Quays and Neath Civic. I'm looking at Nicola, Neath Civic, but we're not in a position to deliver those schemes by the end of March. So as you rightly say, the funding's been transferred into reserves and will then be used next year and then built into the capital programme once the projects are sort of clarified in terms of their value and delivery timescales. So hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Councillor Jones, do you want to respond?
Yeah. If we are transferring revenue money into capital, and I understand that we can do that and we can't do it vice versa. If we were looking at these, then the studies to be able to produce a capital project has obviously been funded from some form of monies that have been allocated to the Environment Directorate. Can I ask, why wasn't this identified as a capital project from the very beginning? Because the whole ethos of being energy efficient should have identified this before the monies were allocated, so it was a capital project. I'm just at a loss here to understand why there's such an underspend in relation to the project.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll bring Nicola back in on this point, please.
Thank you, Chair. We, as members know, we have been trying to establish a team of officers who are concentrating on energy efficiency, net zero carbon, climate change, ecology, and so on and so forth. And that team hasn't grown to the capacity that we need it at yet, but there are a number of individuals in there, and they have, as part of their business as usual activity, so their role in post is to drive down the energy costs of the authority, make sure our assets are operating as efficiently as possible. So they are undertaking regular studies of buildings and putting together business cases to demonstrate whether there is a return on investment should we want to progress with a capital scheme. So for example, if we wanted to invest in a solar farm or a solar facility on or within the curtilage of any of our building assets, they would work out what the capital cost would be and how long it would take for us to get a return on that investment, i.e. how long it would take us to pay off the borrowing costs associated with that and whether it's worth our while. So they do a lot of that as part of their business as usual activity, albeit some of the bigger schemes we do have to commission out depending on the capacity of the staff within the team to undertake that work. But you know, a lot of that work is business as usual activity, which is why it isn't there isn't a sort of a budget code specifically for that work. It is within the salary costs that are consumed by the Environment Directorate. So I don't know if that sort of sufficiently answers your question.
Thank you, Nicola. Councillor Jones?
In part, Nicola, you know, this is a lot of money. This project, this money has been allocated almost now a year. Is the bottom line here saying that we didn't have sufficient staff to move these projects forward, considering the high energy costs, and we haven't had the staff to be able to assist in these projects to reduce our energy costs? You know, is that in a nutshell?
Nicola?
Yes, we didn't and we don't still have sufficient staff within that team a budget has been allocated to that team to grow that team. We've effectively got 2 officers who are technical experts, and we've got 1 admin officer with that team, and that covers all of our building assets as well as our strategy, the sort of strategy objectives to reduce our carbon footprint, reduce our energy consumption, make us greener generally as an authority. We have got a structure that has been designed, and we've been out to advert. We have had some applicants who have submitted application forms for some of the jobs. We are going to be interviewing next week for the manager post for that team, and we hope to get a successful outcome from that process. But it's fair to say that some of the other jobs that we've advertised within that team have received a very poor level of interest from candidates. So it goes back to the question that was raised earlier by Councillor Paddison. We're putting structures in place, we're securing the funding, but we are working within a very difficult sort of environment in terms of securing people with the necessary skills to deliver the objectives we have as a council.
Thank you, Nicola. Very clear. Obviously, difficult area to be in. Councillor Jones, are you happy with that?
I'm not happy because the outcomes are not what we planned for and budgeted for during this year, but it's the answer and it is what it is. So I leave it there, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Next up, I have Councillor Sonia Reynolds, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was concerned to query on page 26, the delegated schools budgets. I'm concerned under that, obviously, that we're looking at a huge change in the reserve position of schools. I know we don't have direct control of school budgets, but do we know or anything about whether there are any schools who are going to not be in a deficit situation, or if we're in a position to know if there might be any redundancies in schools caused by the situation and the funding there? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Can I bring Andrew in for this one, please?
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I'm not quite sure I heard the exact question, but let me see if I can answer it this way. We certainly know which schools are in deficit at the moment. We know, and all of those have a recovery plan in place. We've got a very good idea about which schools will be in a deficit position at the end of this financial year, because of obviously, we're virtually at the end of the year and most of the expenditure has been incurred now. And in terms of redundancies, I would say it is highly likely that we will see redundancies in schools going forward next year. Mainly because of, as you can see, there's an overspend position across the whole school sector. There's schools in that which are in a worse position than others, but it is highly likely. In fact, I was only talking to a school last week who are looking to make voluntary redundancies to avoid compulsories, and I'm sure they will come forward when schools get their budgets at some point in March. But yeah, we are aware of the financial situation that schools are in now and projected going forward.
Thank you, Andrew. Obviously not a situation we want to be in, but as I say, budgets are very restrictive at the moment. Councillor Reynolds, would you like to come back?
No, I think that's an answer, and we need to keep an eye on this in education scrutiny.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Next up, Councillor Charlotte Goldsworthy, please.
Chair, I've just been contacted by Charlotte Goldsworthy. She's been chucked out by her internet connection or something. So she asked me if I could ask her question. So is that okay?
Yeah, fine. Go ahead, Councillor Patson.
So she's just asked me to ask, how do we know if there's an average cost of a review to the council? She says she feels that there are lots of reviews ongoing, and do they add, how much do they add to the cost of things? Like the review of the fleet, is there a cost, and do they all add up? I'm sorry, she's only just finished talking to me, so I just got the gist of the
Yeah.
question.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I think I'd bring Hugh in, please.
Yeah, thank you. When the answer is no, there's no average cost, obviously. Each review will have a cost which is linked to the amount of work and input involved. I'm probably right in saying that most of those reviews are signed off by either cabinet or cabinet boards, so there will be full members will be cited on the cost of those reviews, and each will have its own business case which says the cost of the review will be paid back by savings it delivers. So no average cost, but I think we do satisfy ourselves that there is a business case in each opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Hugh.
you, Chair. I'll relay that answer to her unless she watches this back. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Are there any other members' questions, please? I can't see any indication on that one. Okay. The recommendation is listed on page 31 of the Cabinet Agenda Pack. I'm happy to propose it. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Henton. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this decision is supported to Cabinet.
Can't see any indications to the contrary, Chair, so the recommendation is supported Cabinet.
Thanks again, Alison. Moving on. Agenda item 9. This is the capital budget monitoring, quarter 3. These are listed on pages 41 to 56 of the Cabinet agenda. Officers, would you like to add anything additional to the report?
No, nothing. Thank you, Chair. I'll just take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Moving along to members' questions, I have indication at the moment that Councillor Sean Percy would like to ask questions. Thank you.
Diolch, David. Thank you. Yeah, a few questions on this report, Chair. The first one is on page 45 in relation to the Pontardawe Arts Centre cinema. The actual spend on the outturn is only 40k. There's no commentary on that item, so I'd be grateful if officers could give an update as to the status of that project in terms of the spend. Chair, should I ask all the questions before officers come back?
We'll take one at a time, please, Councillor
Okay.
Percy. So we'll bring in Hugh, yes?
Yes,
Hugh,
please.
please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yes, so in terms of the Arts Centre, I don't know the specific detail, Councillor Percy, but I do know the project has been delayed because the tenders were in excess of the funding available, and Andrew's colleagues brought a report back to the Cabinet looking to secure additional funding. So that delayed the start of the contract, and I'm aware that the contractor is due to start on site, I think, in the next 3 weeks, I'd say. So probably there will be more spend than that £40,000 in terms of design work and materials. But yeah, just a delay in terms of the fact there wasn't sufficient funding, and obviously had to seek member approval to carry on. So that's the answer that I have for that one.
Thank you, Hugh. Councillor Percy?
Fantastic. No, that's great. Thanks, Hugh. So my next question is on page 47, and there's a line there: regeneration harbourside infrastructure. There was 441,000 in for that item, which hasn't been spent. And again, I'm not sure what it relates to. There's no commentary there. So if somebody could give some information on that, I'd be really grateful.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Back over to Hugh, please.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll take a comment on board, Councillor Percy, but the comments to try and make sure we add some more narrative going forward. In terms of that project, that's the residual budget that remains from the large infrastructure project that we undertook on the Harbourside site. So we had European funding to do some work there, which we match funded ourselves. And there's a balance of the budget remaining. We are in discussion at the moment in terms of the final account for the project and things like that. So that budget remains in order to settle that as and when it's agreed. So thank you for that.
Very clear. Thanks, Hugh. Councillor Percy.
Thanks. No, that clears that up. That's great. My next two questions then are on page 54 under the line regeneration other. There's quite a lot of smaller sort of projects and schemes in the commentary there. And there's just two that I'd like a bit more information on if that's possible. The first one is the 10k new budget for Neath Library refurbishment. I'm not sure whether that refers to the new library or the old library and what that refurbishment is. So it'd be great if somebody could give some information on that. And then likewise, there's a £10,000 budget for the Bias Works site. So I'd be interested to understand what that relates to as well in relation to that site. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Back to Hugh, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the first one, the Neath Library, is an allocation of £10,000 to undertake a feasibility study into the potential to refurbish the old Neath Library by Victoria Gardens. So we're hoping that by undertaking a feasibility study there will allow us to apply for a grant, which will then hopefully refurbish that building. And I don't know the answer to the buyer's works, but I would suggest that it's probably another feasibility study to undertake work to see the potential for that site. And I'm looking across at Nicola and she's nodding at me. So I think she wants to come in as well, Chair, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. We're hoping to develop a master plan within the wider Harbourside area, and Bias Works, together with a large number of other parcels of land, fall within that master plan area. So we're going to be just doing some due diligence in that area and feasibility work to establish what we can deliver and whether or not our aspirations are achievable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both. Councillor Percy, would you like to respond?
Yeah, only briefly, Chair. No, thanks to you both for the answers there. Both quite welcome actually in terms of feasibility on the old Neath Library build, and likewise, officers, one that I've raised Bias Works as a real opportunity site potentially. So yeah, I'm happy to see both those schemes in there. Diolch.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Next up, I have Councillor Sonia Reynolds.
Thank you. I'm looking at page, of course, it's just flicked off. Just headed back to the beginning. The item is, you give me a minute. Right. On the capital maintenance for schools in terms of grants spent, and concern in terms of, both the ELL grants and knowing how much capital maintenance is required in our schools, that those aren't, completely utilised. So I wondered if there were any answers about why that's happened. There's no commentary on the capital maintenance for schools.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I think you're referring to page 51. It is capital maintenance for schools for the previous year's grants. Could I bring in
45, sorry, Chair.
Oh, 45. Sorry, I'm looking at a different page. Hang on then.
So just in terms of page 45, the second line down, capital maintenance for schools, obviously we're showing a spend as at the end of December of 2.739 million against a budget of 2.9. So given there'll be a delay in some expenditure, I expect that to be fully spent. In terms of the additional learning needs line, where we got 60,000 spend against 1.3 million, the comment on site works progressing well suggests it'll be spent by the end of the year, but I'm not cited on the detail. So I'm happy to come back to you with the, Andrew's next to me. And
thank you. Bring Andrew in, please.
Bring Andrew, thank you.
Yeah, just on the additional learning needs provisions, there's a provision of Blaen Hondden and Ysgol Hendrefallen. The works are progressing. There has been a delay around the delivery of the temporary, well, it's not temporary accommodation, it's mobile classrooms essentially. So that's the groundworks have been done. I think one of the temporary buildings is on site. So I think there's just a timing issue there between the works being finally complete and the invoicing and obviously that then appearing in our accounts. Pardon me. So that work is on site already.
Bring Hugh back in as well, please.
Just in terms of the Blaen Hondden work, I can confirm as a resident of Brincoch that the works are on site because they cause chaos in the village on a weekend, closing main roads. So that's they're definitely on site, Andrew. Thank you.
It's good news, Chair.
Nice to see you pushing ahead. And sorry we spoiled your weekend. Councillor Reynolds, would you like to come back in?
Thank you.
Hey, lovely, thank you. Are there any other questions on this item, please? I can't see any. So the recommendation is listed on page 43 of the Cabinet Agenda Pack. I'm happy to propose it. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Henton. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Many thanks, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this decision is supported to Cabinet.
Can't see any indications to the contrary, Chair. The recommendation is supported to Cabinet.
Many thanks, Alison. Moving back to our own agenda, Cabinet Scrutiny Agenda, Agenda Item 5, Forward Work Programme, which is on pages 17 to 18. This item's just been noting, unless members have comments, and I'm sure that with the current scrutiny review underway that hopefully this will be, as I've said before, have a lot more in it in the future. Okay. Are there any comments on the forward work programme, please? No? Okay, thank you all. Agenda item 6, this is urgent items. As I always say, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that there are no urgent items this afternoon, which leaves us at the end of business for today. Thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you all.